Hi, welcome to another episode of Ta Chek or PekChek.
I'm Weiren,
I'm Nicholas.
and together we are education lifestyle podcast where each week we take a topic and we discuss it, and at the end of the podcast we decide whether or not the topic is Ta Chek, which is,
Interesting,
or PekChek, which is.
frustrating.
So for today's topic, I'm not sure if we're going to be shooting ourselves in the foot.
Yeah.
So recently on the Straits Times, they released that Singaporean families are apparently, or at least Singaporean families spend 1.8 billion on private tuition for children in 2023. Now, even as a private tutor myself, right, I feel that this number is very mind-boggling and
It's
very astronomical.
Yeah.
So this was conducted in a survey, I think in last year. And I think this survey is conducted over a period of every 5 years they'll do one time. So to just illustrate how astronomical this amount is, right? I think in 2008. In
How
2008,
old
this
were we
how long was it? This is 15 years ago.
Yes.
And this was when I just entered uni, so it's not long after our education lah. So this in 2008, the total spending was
820 million.
So this means that in a span of 15 years, right, the industry grew by $1 billion. This is
More than double.
yeah. This is quite insane, I think. Yeah.
But I don't feel like the numbers, while they are being big, right, we should also view in terms of how much is each of the household averagely spending.
Yes.
All right, and I do also want to inject a bit of some sense of statistic itself to show that the numbers does suggest that the average for each household is $162 per month. Okay,
the 100, just to qualify, the $162 is only for the top tier. Of the, so this means the top 20th percentile of household income earners are spending $162.60 per month on average. So because this is on average, right, some of the top tier income earners don't have tuition.
So this is not very weighted average, right?
Most likely what will happen is that the people who are spending way more than this $162.60.
But I do feel that there's a little bit of a degree of again, I feel like I'm shooting ourselves in the foot by saying this, that by looking at the staggering amount that was being spent, which is 1.8 billion, and now average household is 162, will this data shows it's 162 per child per household, or is this regardless of the number of child?
I think it's per household lah.
Okay.
I think it's per household because different households, again, this $162 is an average. So the people who don't have tuition will likely pull down that average.
I see.
So as mentioned, those parents who are actually shelling out money,
It could have been much more.
will be paying much more. I mean, you think about it, the most budget tuitions per month is also I think $80 per month or $100 per month.
Talking about those being offered by the community centers.
The community centers.
Yes.
I think there are also free programs, but in which case it's free, right? So those budget already. So let's take a look at the statistics. So in this particular article, it says that even the lowest 20th percentile is only spending $36.30 per month. But even for the most budget tuition options, $80 per month is that's the most budget tuition option that is out there. So likely is again the effect of averaging down.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. The Ministry of Education does have certain efforts to want to reduce the academic stress on students. I think in various of our episodes that has mentioned before, we did talk about the reworking of the PSL system in the AL system.
Yes.
Yep. We have also talked about the change in the GP program.
Did we ever talk about the SPB, the full subject-based spending?
We mentioned briefly, but maybe just to review for our listeners, the subject-based spending itself is whereby it's done when the kids are transitioning from primary 6 to secondary 1. All right, and based off their overall AL score, they'll be given a banding of G3, G2, or G1. That's sort of relating to the old system, Express, normal academic as well as normal technical.
This is based off each subject.
Correct.
So even in spite of MOE's effort to reduce academic pressure, Singaporeans are still paying 1.8 billion.
Because I would have believed that if you were to enter into overall G3 stream, but you are not that decent in terms of, let's say, your mathematics, for example.
Yeah.
In your secondary one, they will not force you to undertake a G3 mathematics, but you're given the option to do a G2 mathematics to sort of like you learn at your own pacing.
Yes.
Yeah. So, like I say, coming back towards this, even though with all these efforts itself, I will want to talk about the ground sentiments of parents, right? Which is the fact that I think parents will always, and this is not really just an Asian thing, I think this is quite universal, that parents will always want the best for their kids. And I think that in the educational atmosphere and landscape in Singapore, wanting the best for your kids will come in different cases for different parents. Like for parents, there's some, I mean, if you talk about clientele coming to the center, I will really just broadly, put them into 3 categories. Right, the one that are already getting A's. All right, they are here to maintain the score.
Yes.
To be honest, I don't know. Maybe you can share with me. This population of students are rare and a few.
Yes.
Yep. All right. The second one, which is more of the median population, are those that are getting B's and maybe a fairly decent high C's. All right, they are here to bump up their grades to the next
grade
one.
Right?
And I think that this is the majority of the students. All right, and finally the last one, all right, are those that are really at the bottom rung of their class cohort, and they are just here to put it in words, to really to get as much as they can to help them to pass the subject. It's not to excel, but to pass. So in short, we have maintenance, the group that wants to maintain, the other that wants to excel, and the last one that wants to survive and pass. All right. So if you put at least in the category that I've seen, all right, if you put students into these 3 broad categories, I think there is still a certain need for tuition programs. All right, because it is a way for them to get additional exposure outside of class. And what about yourself? Is this 3 broad categories something that you have experienced?
Yes, I do believe so. So I think at the end of the day, like what you mentioned, parents want the best for their kids. And if the kid is not performing well academically in school, or they have a certain goal in mind, then I think naturally the parent will want to send them to us for tuition. But I think what you mentioned about it being universal, I feel that this whole tuition thing, right, is a very Asian thing.
Okay, once again back to the Asian thing.
It's a very, very Asian thing, because I have spoken to my friends in France, in Germany before, and then they tell me that, like, what? You're a after school program teacher to teach the O levels. They are so baffled by this idea that parents will actually send their kids for more school outside of school. Right? So I think this is a very clearly East Asian thing, because we have, I mean, not just in Singapore, I believe in Korea, in Taiwan, in China and in Japan also. I mean, all of these countries, like, tuition is a big, massive industry, right? So I feel that this is something which is very ingrained in our culture. And I think increasingly also Malaysia also is becoming very tuition focused, or rather the industry seems to be growing. So do you feel that parents are really spending too much on tuition?
I think in terms of money wise, I think the amount that we are willing to part as parents for our kids for tuition, I'm just going to lump in enrichment as well, even like music and everything.
All the robotics classes,
music,
and
robotics,
coding,
art class, dance, and all the Shazam. I feel like we are willing to part with a significant amount of our money. All right, but not to the extent that we have to go to bank to take loans to help to service all this tuition, because it has been. It's more of I mean, the current lingo here is FOMO. All right, fear of missing out. Long time ago in my previous workplace, I have a colleague that sent his child to this particular, I'm not going to name drop that center, but it's more of like left brain, right brain learning kind of thing. All right. So the whole basis of this particular learning of this center here is that you have to start very early, because once you go past a certain age threshold, and I believe he told me it was 3 or 4 years old, then the activation of that particular sphere of that brain is going to be impaired. It won't be that good. So at first I was like, okay, maybe it's just a call to action by the center to try to rally for sales. And as the kid went, all right, the kid has shown, at least based off my interaction with his child, all right, has shown a lot of independence in learning, as well as a superb skill in memory retention. So
it really works, lah.
I mean, unless she really prepare and stage that performance for me, she would take like a book. Maybe you can just give her a dictionary. All right, then you would say, okay, the first 10 pages. All right, can you tell me all the words on the first 10? You give her like maybe like 5 minutes. Then there's a certain ritual. She flip the pages, how she scan through eyes and everything. And her memory retention, I'll say, is 90 to 95%. And the words are not muttered in random order, but it's in chronological order.
I think I know roughly what kind of program that you're talking about. But to my knowledge, this kind of program also very heavily involve the parent, right?
Yes.
So how much of it is actually because not the program specifically, but it's because the parent is
reinforcement,
there and then reinforcing for the kids. So it need not be this particular program.
Correct.
It can just be like the parent every day being consistent and then.
So here's the thing.
Is it?
So here's the thing. So I have this particular theory that the information that was being shown to us, the 1.8 billion, is very much of like a survivor bias. Now, what do I mean by that? If, let's say, this is again going to encompass your socio-economic status. If you're going to be well-to-do, the amount of spare cash, liquidity that you can spend is definitely going to be higher. And you will seek better quality tuition. You will also seek tuition that has a more individual, personalized attention to your child itself like that. But again, like you say, the whole idea here that we want the best for our child will not then mean that, oh, I can only afford tuition if I'm doing well. Even if I'm not doing well, even if I'm at the poverty line, I mean, this is being exaggerating, I will still want the best for my child. I'll still want to go and find for tuition itself from that. So with this being said, there has been articles that is being shown that we are spending $1.8 billion. But of recent, very near to this article that was being published, there was a Channel News Asia article.
Oh, right. The opinion piece lah.
It's an opinion piece. So that on that piece itself, if you can just walk us through, it was mostly on the fact that it was trying to debunk or it was trying to refute the need for tuition. Do you remember that piece that came out?
So I believe this particular person was trying to say that, or at least trying to make a case for, instead of sending my kid for academic tuition, let's try to focus more on real life problem solving skills instead.
Yeah.
So I personally felt, I had mixed feelings about this particular article. I think that just because you send your kid for tuition doesn't necessarily mean that the kid is not learning real life skills, right?
My opinion here is that it is a very parent-centric role in educating a child. So if, let's say, you are someone that is not academically inclined, you're more of a hands-on person, naturally itself, you will want to outsource these education kind of skills to professionals.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this I understand that the person who writing this article is also a professor. So I think he already is equipped with the skills necessary to help. I assume that the person is already equipped with the necessary skills to help the son or the daughter excel in school, or at the very least have the correct mindset to guide the son and the daughter, right?
He or she have that academic background to assist the child itself.
Yes. But I use myself as an example. So let's say we have Chinese, for example. Myself and my wife, we both of us we 讲 kentang one. We are quite we use English in our daily life. Okay, in our house we hardly ever speak Chinese. But I mean we can, but we hardly ever speak Chinese in our daily conversation. So even with my kid. So for my son, at very least, he absolutely hates Chinese.
Okay.
And we are trying our best to reverse this process. Okay. But we end up sending him to Chinese tuition because we know that left to the house, we simply will not be able to get in enough Chinese speaking time with him.
Yep.
With him. Yep. So we send him for Chinese tuition. I mean, what else is there for us to do? Right?
But But it's also the case of like if you and your wife are both swimming coaches, you will not send your child out for swimming unless you really have no time to coach him outside of your own time.
I beg to differ though. I mean, I think for swimming, I'm not sure about this particular example. But back then when I was in MOE, I actually had some colleagues.
Okay.
And they would tell me that they send their kids for math. I remember that there was this math teacher, and she tells me that she sends her kid for math tuition.
Okay, but that's a bit ironic, right?
Yes, but because I believe also that even though sometimes the parent, right, has the necessary skills to teach the kid, the parent doesn't want to damage the relationship with the kid as well.
And I think that is very critical. You don't want to redefine your relationship with the kid.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
So I think when parents send their kids for tuition, right, there are many different reasons, many different goals to be met. So I think one of them is this law. The parent recognizes that the kid is lacking in a particular subject, but because she doesn't want to damage the relationship with the kid, right? She outsources.
Okay.
And sometimes the kid listens better to a third party rather than to the parent.
So the parents still remain as a neutral party and not the bad guy at the
Yes,
end.
yes,
All right,
yes,
you're outsourcing
exactly.
the bad guy role to someone else.
Yeah. I mean, not necessarily bad guy, because I told you before, right? As I just mentioned, sometimes the kid is more receptive to this third party as well.
Than yourself.
Yeah. But I also, do you think as well, right, there are some parents who send the kid just as to get the kids out of the hair?
Oh, this is it's a very touchy thing, but
I be very honest with you. When I drop my kids off at the Chinese
that's your
language
breeder,
center, right?
That's your breeder, is it?
Yes, to me, I'm like,
Okay.
at least for like 1+ hours, 1.5 hours, right?
Okay.
I get to declutter and you know, when the kids are at home, they'll just keep talking. Yeah.
I don't deny that because most of the sending of my child to my child does have a Chinese tuition as well.
Yes.
All right. Most of the time it is my spouse that sent my child to tuition, and to my knowledge, my spouse will then take a breather at the nearby coffee shop. Maybe catch a cup of tea, catch out any time of work. It's time for themselves. So I don't think there is I think yes, all right. I do see a lot of parents, they will use this time to go and shop and everything too. But at the end of the day, sending the child to the tuition, to the enrichment, as what we have mentioned, it has a myriad of reasons. All right. It could be for the child to improve on their weakness. All right. For the parents to not play the bad person. All right. To be the educator, even though they have the subject matter knowledge on that. And also lastly for the kind of decluttering. But I feel that the whole essence of tuition now for students, at least on the parents' point of view, that sending kids to tuition is more of a FOMO thing. I really feel so. Because in the case of in the classroom itself, I do have students, and I do hope that I'm not like taking a gun and shooting everyone down. That there are tutors or teachers in schools that will mention that, hey, you maybe as a sneak remark that you're going to ask your tuition teacher to teach. I don't need to teach so much because it will be covered anyway. So if let's say the student come from a school where it's of relative affluence, everyone having external help, I think that remark could be construed as, okay lah, we do have external help. But what if you are in schools that people come from different economic background? And what if they do not have access to all this help? And I think that's quite worrisome as well from there. And I do experience certain cases that there are, I think of recent, my colleague did mention to me, for listeners out there was this particular thing on the relative molecular mass of air.
Yes.
I don't know if you recall this case, all right? And this is with relation to upper secondary chemistry.
Yes.
And there was a conflict in the numbers. And this is a very essential number, the relative molecular mass of air, because it helps measure density and the collection of gases.
If the number is different, then the answer will be completely
correct.
off.
So our colleague caught it early, and then we have an internal discussion. We went to search around to see whether was there any change in literacy, but actually no, it was actually a wrong data that was being given. And could you imagine if the kid went on to the national examination with this wrong piece of information? That would be quite deadly.
I mean, school teachers are not perfect as well.
Yeah.
And I also acknowledge that I'm not trying to put down MOE teachers, and I fully acknowledge that MOE teachers themselves are also very overworked and doing their best. But I think at times, sometimes the effort also is not enough, may not be necessarily enough.
I'm not trying to construe the fact that tuition is acting as a safety net for the very rare and occasional mistake that school teachers make. I'm not trying to say that. All right. But Viren, you do agree that tuition does have its place and its merit in current age for students.
I think in a perfect world, I think in a perfect
tuition
world,
should not
tuition
exist.
should not exist.
Should not exist.
Because in a perfect world, the school teachers are great. Every student learns perfectly from their own school teacher. So in a perfect world,
we should not exist.
We should not exist. But unfortunately, we're not. It's not a perfect world, right? So I've always explained my job that I've always explained like the benefits of the tuition as we allow for in economic terms, we allow for more efficient allocation of
resources
in terms of like the tutor and the student for a fee, of course, but there is a more efficient matching, because in school, once the school decides like, oh, okay, this is your math teacher,
you're stuck.
You're stuck with that math teacher. And I mean, the math teacher is only human. The math teacher has their own biases, their own fallacies. So if for some reason the particular student doesn't like the teacher, or the teacher doesn't like the particular student, too bad.
Yeah.
Right? So at this point, the student is allowed to search out in the open market for a suitable tutor that they like. Be a private tutor or a group tutor.
But this is also the whole case. If it's a perfect world, using this analogy, then childcare centers and after school care should not exist at all, right? Because parents will have
will take
time,
care,
right? Yeah, exactly, right? So I think I hope listeners here do not see tuition as like a cash grabbing type of industry. But I think we're
here to fulfill a need.
Yeah, this is not a self-serving podcast, but really for customers to know that there is a need to be fulfilled. And while schools are more of like attending to 80% of the child's need, it's the 20% of the child's need that sometimes is quite destructive in their learning, because there are still some core concepts in that 20% that's not being answered, and if it's not learned and taught timely enough, it will affect their further learning down the road from there. Yeah,
it's a bit like a second opinion from a doctor, right?
Yes, and I think so. And again, I know this is not a popular piece, but I think sometimes in tuition, because of how our academic calendar differs from schools itself, there will be minimal amount of hot housing that's being done for the child. Very, very minimal. So, but we're not talking about, P4, we teach P5 topics and all, but maybe we are 1 or 2 topics ahead. So this was a very impressionable moment in my life when I never attended tuition until I was JC1. Yeah. And I find the idea of tuition very repugnant. I was like, no, like...
At the time,
yeah, I was like, why do I have to go tuition? Is it because I'm bad and all? So at the time, you only go to tuition when you are jialat. So I was really jialat. My JC1 promo result for mathematics, I got 3 out of 100.
Aiyo.
So I think that defines as jialat really. Okay. So for first time in my life, I went to tuition, and that tutor himself was kind enough to walk me through the ropes, but he made me, say, oh, you have to come for extra classes and all. At that time, I find it as a form of a self-sign-up paid torture classes. Why do I torture myself and go? But there was a certain degree of hot housing, and while he's remedying my older topics misconception and simultaneously hot housing me some future JC2 topics, I think the thing that I'm trying to say here is that when I finally went back to school in JC2, fortunately I got promoted, I was 1 or 2 topics ahead. So when I would go to school, it's no longer that of learning per se, but my teachers in school now plays a more review role for me, because I learned it before already. And I'm trying to impress upon my students that this hot housing, because some students are just very also repugnant with the whole idea of why do I have to kind of learn earlier and everything. But I told them the golden idea here is that when you're in school, I know that I've done my job well when you know what the teacher is about to teach. Then I think that you are in a more comfortable position as compared to
I take on a very sorry, my brain is not like yours lah. You're a very good student, but for me, right? So my parents did sign me up for secondary tuition for math as well as JC. So I think in secondary, I did tell my parents for a short while, like, oh no, I don't want. I think I can do myself. But then in the end, I cannot do myself.
Cannot okay.
I cannot do myself. So I ended up going for tuition. So the thing is, I make use of tuition, right, to not listen in class.
Okay.
To slack in class. And then socialize with my friends.
But that itself, it also means that you got
I'm
taught
okay.
sufficiently.
Yeah, but I suppose my results at the end of the day was okay. I mean, for secondary school it was fine. For JC, I think my tuition work did help me a lot more. So my JC results were quite a bit better. But yeah, I just used my time to do other things.
So you allocated your time to socialize lah.
Yeah, I allocated my time to socializing. I'm quite a terrible student lah.
Okay.
So just to go back to the question of tuition, like for yourself as a parent, let's say your child ends up like in primary school, for example, would you send your kid for tuition classes?
Okay, if you ask me now and you ask me then, I think my reply will be very different. So the now me will say that I will send my child on a need-to basis. So if my child does terrible in a certain subject for an prolonged agonizing period of time, maybe I say 2 semesters, all right, then I think that is a red flag for me to send my child for tuition. That's what I will do. So I will not adopt I will go to tuition even before knowing my child's needs, but more of only after knowing my child's needs, then I'll send my child for tuition.
Okay.
It's more of a responsive kind of sending to. What about yourself? Will you pre-send your child to tuition?
So, because I have a primary school going child, I personally, for Chinese and for language, right, I definitely will send. I will maintain like.
But that's because inherently you know that your child has a particular lack of interest or weakness in that subject, right?
Yes, yes, but not just that. I think for me, I feel that language is something that needs to be consistently reinforced.
Okay.
And if there's no sort of reinforcement of this language, I definitely will need to seek some help outside. So I will definitely outsource.
So for language, it's more like a background voice, background reinforcement.
Yeah, so the language I cannot compromise.
Okay.
But I think for math and science and English, I speak from a position of I'm a teacher as well. So as far as possible, I will try to coach my kid myself. But if let's say I feel that this is not working out, either academically or relationship-wise, definitely I will start to outsource lah. Okay. Definitely I'll start to outsource. And for myself also, I will try to pay attention to my kids' needs and mathematics. For myself, because I'm the math teacher. I'm the math teacher here in this center, so I will pay a little bit more attention to what is being taught in school as well, and just follow roughly whether or not my son is on par with his school and keeping up with his schoolwork lah.
But what if now this is a different world? Your child come to you that I need tuition, that I want tuition. Will you, however, on the other hand, say that, okay, you know what, let's take a look at your next grade, your next semester grade before we decide? Or you'll be like, oh really? You want to torture yourself or just say the tuition?
I think I will explore the underlying reasons why. So I'll ask him like, why do you need tuition? Is it because you feel that you're falling behind? What are you fearful of? Is it because your other friends are having tuition, but actually your grades are fine? Right? So, or is it because, I don't know, there is somebody that you like that is going for this tuition?
That you also want to go to tuition.
Yeah, that's why you also want to go to.
These are very legitimate reasons.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So I think I will find the underlying reason first. And if it is really like a fear that is legitimate, I will be very willing to very open to just spend the money lah.
I think ultimately for me, the bottom line is on a need-to basis, and something that you have just emphasized earlier ahead is I don't want to strain my relationship with my child. And I know that if let's say I can help my child to produce good grades, but at the expense of my child recognizing me more as a tutor now than a father, then I wouldn't want that. I'd rather send her to someone that I can trust. So if my child is bad, I'll send my child to you. I can trust.
Okay.
Okay, so I think this is a rather convoluting topic that we're talking about, because I think everyone has very differing opinions on how and when tuition should have been executed. All right, I think needless to say, tuition industry I think is going to be here to stay for a pretty long time, as long as the emphasis on education is here. And Singapore is still otherwise a very meritocracy society. All right, for you to go to the next rung in your education is still very grade based. So if tuition is proven to help the kids in this academic rigor, I think tuition should now be seen not so much as a want-to, but more of as like a common rite of passage for a lot of students, especially if you really need the help, to really catch up. So, Viren, what do you think? Today, is this an interesting or frustrating topic to you?
To me,
On a parent's perspective.
from a parent's perspective, I don't know. Tuition is very expensive.
Yes, tuition is very expensive.
Tuition is very expensive. I say this from the perspective of a service provider. Tuition is expensive. So if I end up having to pay tuition fees for my kid, right, I will begrudgingly do so. So I feel that it's a PekChek.
It's a big thing.
PekChek.
Okay. And you have 2 kids, right?
Yes, and I have 2 kids some more.
Times 2, right?
Yes.
Times 2. I feel that for the perspective of the parents, I am on board with you. I find it very frustrating, a very PekChek topic. I think more on the fact of I need to do it. Not so much the money wise, but I think it siphons off some time that I can spend with my child. Yeah, because we can't escape the fact that this is the web of life in a Singapore students' growing up phase, that they really have to study. You spend a good 16 years of your life, or maybe all the way up to 18 or 19 years of life studying. So I'm frustrated, and also for the fact that I'm a little bit more niao. I will go around, look for review, I will again read up, is this tutor good or not, then I will send my child for trial classes. So I think there's still a bit of a phase that my child had to go through, because I'm not the one that will just drop the bomb and say, okay, fine. I want to be more involved in that. Yeah, but I think as a student point of view, maybe go from a student point of view, I think for a student point of view is relatively frustrating also for them, because they know they need to do it, and then it also siphon off time for what they will want to do. Otherwise,
right?
Yeah. But one thing for my listeners and to Wayron, what I will always tell my student here is that do not get the idea here that when we are teaching or when you're coming for tuition, we will never assume that you love to come for tuition.
Yes.
And you know that when we adults work, it's not because it's very rare that we find work that we like. But I told them that in tuition, or at least in any other facets of life, if you have to do something you like, all right, that's always an advantage, a benefit.
Right, yeah.
But if you have to do something you don't like, but it's necessary, but you still put your heart into doing it, all right, someone once told me, if there's something that's worth doing, all right, it's worth doing it badly. So from this particular phrase, it's telling you that even if you don't like it, but this is something that you need to do, you anyhow do is still better than you don't do at all. All right, so I tell my students that this is actually a form of discipline. All right, for you to do something that you don't like, and I think this will assist the students in a lot of facets of their life as they go through. When they become a parent,
it's not enjoyable being a parent all the time. It's not enjoyable going to work all the time.
But it's a form of discipline.
Yeah,
it's a form of discipline.
Steel yourself and just get through it.
I also think this is a good behavior. So we want to hear from our listeners how you feel about this tuition, 1.8 billion staggering industry, and what is your experiences in finding out specific help for your child? Is it a very parent-centric kind of thing that you are looking for help for your child, or is it more of a child-initiated kind of thing that they're asking you for help? All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.